Hey everyone, I've got a special guest with me today. His name is Earl Johnson. Earl and I go back a couple of years, maybe about 2.5 years. He's very optimistic. He's always very happy, smiling, and knows lots of people. Um, Earl, you want to say hi to us?
Morning, all.
All right, awesome. So Earl and I, we actually met at a men's Bible study, hosted next door to my house in Flower Mound. That's where I actually met Earl, and I got to know him. He was married at the time, um, and was not aware that he was looking to get divorced. I don't think anybody in the group knew you were heading that direction or that's something that came up. And he met with me privately after one of the meetings and mentioned, "Hey, I'm looking to buy a home." And I didn't know what he meant by that. A lot of people come and ask me to help them with homes, but I was like, "Man, aren't you married?" And he's like, "Well, so the deal is, we're going to be getting divorced." And I think at that point he'd already been living in an apartment. Um, and he said, "I'm going to make a transition into, getting a home, but I really like to get into the investment side," because he knew that I do a lot of investment type work. So that's where we kind of started. So we met at Bible study, and then he told me kind of what he was looking for. And then he subsequently got divorced. I said, "Hey, we can't do anything until that's final, because you guys know in Texas, if you buy a home while still married, she's going to have 50% unless you can really identify it's a separate property, which is typically expensive and complicated." So that's kind of a rundown. Any thoughts on that, Earl? Is that pretty close to how all this started?
That is exactly just the way it all started. And the first home we actually found rather quickly, and it's you know,
Well,
it's
we'll
just
talk about that. So we started talking in January. We didn't buy until the fall. So we had to get through finalizing, your personal life and getting you set up. And you had, some cash and stuff available. And I said, "Earl, I know you've got plenty of cash to easily buy a home, but I think I may have a better option. Why don't we look at trying to minimize the amount of cash out of pocket? And what if we try to buy two homes? What if we try to buy three homes?" And I think at the time, Earl didn't see how that was possible, thinking that he's going to have to swallow and put all of his money down on one house to own a rental property. I said, "Man, I really don't like using up much of our cash. I'd rather leverage, especially with the interest rates that are reasonable." So that's the way we approached it. And the first one, we bought a townhome in Louisville. It was a safe investment. It was going to stay rented. It was in decent shape. It was in good shape, really. Didn't need a whole lot of work. I think Earl put a little bit of elbow grease into it. Nothing real expensive. I think you did some of your own touches, which I wouldn't generally recommend, but you put turf in the back because, there's no reason to even have a mower at the house. So you're like, "Well, I'll eliminate all reason." So he actually put artificial turf in the back, which most of you know is pretty expensive. It's probably 10 to 1 over the cost of putting in sod. But it wasn't that big of a space. Ended up being a good deal for him, and the renter didn't need to mess with renting it. So we got that one for less than $10,000. Earl invested less than 10 on that one, and the rent covers 100% of his mortgage. Okay. We'll move on to the second one. So he comes to me and he said, "Hey, I really want to get another one." I said, "Hey, we haven't touched much of your house or your money. So let's look at buying a second one." So we talked about what the second one would look like. And we almost immediately went out. We found an off market property. We did something called the Burr method. I won't get too technical, but the idea is you buy, renovate, refinance, rent out, and repeat. Okay, that's the Burr method in general. It does use up some cash to make the whole thing work, and his total investment in that one was about 60,000. But the benefit is when he refinanced it, his note was 225, and we refinanced it, and the value was 300. That means he has $75,000 equity on a $60,000 investment, and the rent again covers all of his all of his mortgage payment. And then we did a third one just recently. We just closed and funded on that one. And so it's all within, I would say, 13 months ish from the first one to the third one. And he invested that one, I think, would you say $12,000 is what it cost you?
$12,000. Yeah.
And again, we got that one ended up being a brand new home. So we immediately got a tenant within about 7 to 10 days, and they just signed and executed a lease. So he's now got he has a little bit of cash flow in all of these, but the cash flow is not what our focus is. Again, he now has a renter covering his mortgage payment. In fact, they're going to pay him before he even makes his first mortgage payment on this one. So I thought it was a pretty good illustration. I don't get a chance to talk with very many investors that I do this stuff with, but I thought Earl had a really good story. He came to me wanting to buy one. who's going to spend the same amount of money doing one house, probably roughly about $80,000, I think was what he was really thinking. And we ended up spending 80 and we got three houses. Not only do we get three houses, he's got current home value of all three is about $850,000. Okay. And that means that his current value at a 5% growth with equity. And when I say 5% growth equity, it's basically a 2% benefit on principal buy down that you're doing every year as you pay the mortgage. You're getting about 2% principal paid by the renter. And then 3% equity is a pretty fair number. Some pockets will get a little better, but most of them, 3% is a very, very fair number. So if you combine those, it's about a 5% equity every single year that he's gaining. So on 850,000, he's gaining over $40,000 a month of equity. And remember, his investment was 80. That means he's repaid his investment in 2 years. And now he's building 40,000 plus because it's 5% compounding. Every year the home goes up 5% on a bigger number. So it's going to continue to grow as his annual growth rate's going to grow really, really well. So is that kind of the way it's worked out? Is that the way you see it, Earl?
That is exactly. I am completely pleased with everything that we've accomplished so far. Looking forward to our next investment.
Yeah. And I've got my eyes and opportunities out. I mean, it takes a lot of like strategy and thinking through and what's the best pocket and best, situation. I'm usually generally less concerned about areas. Um, I'm more concerned in appreciation is going to be decent and we're going to be able to, return on that investment as soon as possible. And again, I like to do minimum investment. So that's a very safe number to try to pay back. Right. Well, awesome, Earl. Any last minute things or anything else you want to say?
Just that my experience working with you has been amazing, and I'm just going to keep doing it.
Awesome, Earl. Well, I'll look forward to the next one. And feel free if you guys like the story. Any one of you can reach out to me through Earl. And most of you can find me pretty easy. I'm everywhere at this point. So I appreciate all you guys. Appreciate your time. Until the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.